It's a fight that Manuel Zelaya dropped shortly after being removed from power. For days, we'd been negotiating with the police to talk to Zelaya, but a face-to-face meeting was not going to happen.
100 Days of Resistance, a report by Avi Lewis, host of the program Fault Lines on Al Jazeera English. It's produced by Avi Lewis and Andrea Schmidt with assistance by freelancer Tim Russo. We're going to go now to Toronto, where Avi Lewis joins us now on the telephone. Welcome to Democracy Now!, Avi. Can you talk about this trip that you took to Honduras? We've seen in the media in this country a portrayal of Zelaya and Micheletti as the two prime players, but you paint a more nuanced political narrative. Can you talk about that?
Well, and Sharif, that was one of our motivations for wanting to go to Honduras, to try to get beyond the easy political narratives that have dominated the coverage of the issue. And as we started this show with talk of how Iraq has disappeared from the front pages, you know, we're dealing with only the second military coup in the hemisphere since the end of the Cold War. And as it grinds on and the Micheletti regime is really trying to run out the clock to the elections at the end of next month, the story has disappeared again. And it's clear that the negotiations are more or less a sham. They're not really going to go anywhere. And so we wanted to get beyond the sort of surface level of reporting that we've been getting. And what we found was, first of all, I mean, we went straight from the airport to a funeral of that young woman who died after exposure to massive tear gas in a demonstration. So we found a tremendous amount of sadness, but extraordinary resilience in the number of people who are going out day after day to the streets. It's clearly about something more than calling for the return of Zelaya. Zelaya, his term is over in January, regardless of whether he's returned to power or not. He was a lame duck president when he was ousted. So the sort of notion that the whole movement against the coup is for the return of Zelaya is a really shallow assessment. Of course, constitutional order must return in Honduras, and there's a powerful symbolic value in a coup government not being allowed to stand and the effects of that coup being reversed. But that doesn't address the deep inequalities in Honduran society, and it doesn't address the tremendous difficulties they have with their constitution, which Oscar Arias of Costa Rica, who is, not exactly, he's known as a diplomatic guy. That's what he got his Nobel Peace Prize for. He called the Honduran constitution the worst in the world. So that process of opening up the Constitution to include indigenous rights and rights for women and really address the deep inequities in a country which is really controlled by just a handful of families, the oligarchs. That's what this was all about. That was the threat to the established order, not Zelaya himself, not the red herring of whether or not he was trying to stay in power. None of that stuff was actually defined in the process. They were opening a process where people could storm the gates of power in a democratic constitutional process, and that was threatening to the people who hold power in Honduras. That's the project that could lead to a rebalancing of power in society. That project, unfortunately, is off the table right now.
And Avi Lewis, we just have a minute, but the role of the United States in these talks and in the region?
Well, the United States imposed $33 million of sanctions and took away some passports of the coup supporters. That was months ago. The United States could do all kinds of things, including playing a much more robust role in the OAS process. And there just hasn't been real international pressure. Interviewing P.J. Crowley at the State Department, I heard very clearly that the United States, the Obama administration, is happy for elections to play out at the end of next month and to cleanse the stain of the coup. They just need some sort of excuse to legitimize those elections. But everybody on all sides, except for the people in the streets, are saying, and a number of many candidates who are now going to boycott the election, which must be reported on more. Most of the powerful forces want the elections to go ahead and give an excuse for the status quo to return. So the United States is doing nothing in its power to really stop that. And that's where Americans need to take more of a voice.
Avi Lewis is host of Fault Lines on Al Jazeera English. We want to thank you very much for being with us. His piece, 100 Days of Resistance, is available in full on Al Jazeera English's YouTube channel. We'll link to that at democracynow.org. And that does it for today's program. Democracy Now! Is produced by Mike Burke, Aaron Mate, Anjali Kamat, Steve Martinez, Nicole Salazar, Hani Masood, and Robbie Karen. Mike DeFilippo, Miguel Noguera, and Peter Curries are our engineers. want to thank you all for being with us for another edition of Democracy Now!